And we are live. So this is episode 27 of the Blue Crocus Experience, and I'm joined today by Jennifer Ginther. Also, she likes to go by Jen, of Contractor Pro Books, and we're going to chat about bookkeeping because that's a topic that I myself want to learn about more, and I know a lot of business owners and contractors, it's kind of a black hole of scariness. And then the stuff that comes after, which is taxes, after you've either done or not done your bookkeeping, and what that looks like. So she has experience in the contracting world. She's grown up in that area. Her family is very involved in that, and so she has really good experiential knowledge of bookkeeping as it relates to contractors and business owners that way. So she brings a lot to the table that way. And if you could maybe talk to us a bit about your background, set the stage, and then we'll dive in, Jen.
Sure, absolutely. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm a QuickBooks Pro advisor currently, and I've had my company for 5 years, coming up on the anniversary. And I started after being in the construction industry for 30 years. I'm actually still a licensed Florida roofing and general contractor. So I still kind of have my hand in that a little bit. My brother has a large remodeling company. My dad is a GC company. And I grew up, my grandfather was a contractor in Michigan. He did commercial contracting. So have really been in the business in a lot of ventures, whether the real estate ventures or construction ventures, kind of throughout my life. So it's been kind of a fun and interesting ride.
The sawdust has never been far from your doorstep.
Exactly. And usually our remodeling projects in our homes are always last, kind of like the shoemaker's children.
Like, the mechanic drives the worst car in town, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we'd always have like the moldings in the house would not be finished and stuff like that because we were working on other people's stuff. So
yeah. No, and one thing I want to mention as well before we dive in here, we're going to talk about QuickBooks because that's the accounting software that you use. And you are a partner with QuickBooks, and so I'm going to drop a link in the description of YouTube and the description of Spotify and all the other areas that the podcast goes out to. So if people aren't using QuickBooks, they can sign up through your link, and they'll get, is it 50% off for the first year? Yes,
it's because I'm a partner with an Intuit reseller, and I'm also a QuickBooks Pro advisor. Because of that, we're able to offer a 50% discount. And it is for 1 year, so that's a really good rate. And usually after the first year, it stays at the manufactured recommended price, so it's still even better than what you'll usually get from QuickBooks. So, and we also have a lot of the discounts. Same thing, we have discounted rates on credit card processing and paychecks and just all sorts of things, payroll, things like that.
Oh, that's huge. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I mean, like, QuickBooks is great. I use this is QuickBooks Online, correct?
Yeah, this is QuickBooks Online. Although there are a lot of if there's people out there that use QuickBooks Desktop, we have ways of being able to remote in like that. So because QuickBooks Desktop is really also very good for a lot of companies will stick with that because they want to do really drill down into job costing, and it's a more robust for some of the large, like if you're a general contractor or something that you'll want to use that. But QuickBooks Online is really great for, concrete, siding, tree contractors, some of these people that are just it's mostly service based. You're not really carrying an inventory or anything like that. So
sure.
We can get you discounts on the QuickBooks Desktop too though. So
yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so once again, I'll leave the link in the description of wherever you're listening to the podcast, and that's a link that goes directly through to give you the 50% off discount, and then excellent rates going forward. So
exactly.
I'll probably mention it again at the end if people forget, but this is a great offer, and it's a great software. I use it personally, and it's kind of the industry standard, to be honest. So.
It really is. It really is. And when you're talking bookkeeping, this is really what most people go with. And I know you and I were talking about, what really is important about bookkeeping for contractors. And probably the first thing is to actually just do it because there's so many that don't do any of the bookkeeping. They don't do it until they have to, which is usually they have a tax issue. They're either not filing or their accountant says, you need to do something. And we see all the time people bring in shoe boxes, or it's kind of the joke trying to figure out what the newest, greatest way that we're going to get receipts. I mean, we've had trash bags, we've had grocery bags. I mean, I just think I had about 10 boxes of shoe boxes, receipts, and it was like, this is interesting. My husband gets frustrated. He's like, we're lining this stuff up along the wall.
It's like a crime scene trying to sort everything out.
Yeah, but it's pretty common with contractors. I mean, you look in most guys' trucks and there'll be receipts flying everywhere. If they're not, I mean, you have some of the really organized people, obviously, but a lot of times, you're busy trying to run jobs, you're busy trying to do all that kind of stuff, and receipts and bookkeeping and taxes are not usually the first thing on your list.
You want to make the money first and then worry about it later, and often that later comes a lot later. Because you want to get your money back from taxes, or you're dreading what you're going to pay. So that actually segues well into, what are the best practices for bookkeeping for contractors and business owners who are really busy. They're running from job to job, probably wearing a million hats. Either they're doing some of the work, supervising, quoting, what have you. So maybe just dive right in there.
Okay. Yeah, I would say, just starting, once you get QuickBooks, if you get QuickBooks Online, that's a really good start. And then really the important thing, obviously, this is my thing, hiring an expert is really important, because we do get a lot of people, they'll sign up and they'll really make a great effort and they'll start to do a good job. They'll hook up their bank fee to that. And then maybe a year later, they'll come in and they'll be like, oh my gosh, help. And a lot of times what it is QuickBooks, there's a lot of advertising that says, oh, it's just a push of a button and it's so easy and everything else, which it can be, but I really think that the setup is one of the most important things. And that's usually where you want somebody who has an accounting background, because there's something called the chart of accounts. And that's kind of like your buckets where you allocate all of your expenses. It's where all your income comes in. And if you have that chart of accounts and you have the setup done correctly first, everything else can be more automated and it can flow more easily. So, I highly recommend getting started with having the setup done by somebody who knows what they're doing, because there'll be a lot of accounts on there that you might not use. And then something like if you get a receipt in, the bank feed will automatically, it'll just categorize it to something, and it might not be, like one instance we see a lot is tax. You've got sales tax, you've got, income tax, you've got all different types of taxes. And QuickBooks, their automated bank feed, it'll see something about tax and you don't know which tax category it's going to be put in. And so we've seen people who, they go to do sales tax or they go to do anything with that, and they are state tax, and they will be like, where is it? So you kind of have to go back and look, and that just causes, more time. So that's one of those things where the setup can really be huge, very, very helpful.
Is that something, I didn't chat about this with you earlier, but is that something that you offer, is like you could hop on a call or a Zoom call or whatever with someone and help them out?
Yeah, absolutely. I do usually set up a 1 hour free consult for people if they want to just have me, if they have QuickBooks, they can invite the accountant. We can do a 1 hour call and kind of look through and see what kind of state they're in, almost like a doctor's, like you can get in there and evaluate what's wrong, and then we can give you an idea of what you need to do, if anything. Where once in a while we come in there and everybody's, depending on the background people have, they'll be doing it awesome, and there's nothing we need, nothing anybody needs to do. So we just tell them, look, you're on the right track. But a lot of times we'll come in and it'll be the chart of accounts will be not set up correctly, or like if you have loans, they need to be set up properly. People don't know that you need to break out your loan payments between principal and interest, things like that. Just stuff that you don't really think about. The fine-tune, and it's like payroll. You want to make sure you're breaking out, depending on what type of entity you have, you want to make sure that you have officer salaries versus worker salaries. Or if you are an LLC with members, you need to make sure that the draws are being categorized, or if there's more than one member, they need to be broken out between them. So that's all important stuff that kind of comes up at tax time. But
and it's stuff that's easily overlooked. You're like, oh, just throw this all into it almost becomes a digital shoebox if it's not set up right.
That's true. That's true. And that's one way of doing that. And that's what I also tell clients, because I really like to, sometimes what we'll do is we'll say, you know what, let's get you on a monthly program where we'll get the setup done correctly. And then what we'll do is we'll do monthly, we'll come in every month. we'll have either access to like read-only bank statements, or else we're going to have the bank statements loaded up into our portal. We'll go through and make sure that everything is coded correctly to the right categories. If we have questions about what the categories are, we'll set that aside, and then at the end of the month, once the reconciliation is done in QuickBooks, we'll have a call with the client, and we will go over their income statement, their balance statement, their statement of cash flows. And at the same time, we'll go through and say, hey, what was this payment for? Was this a draw? Was this something where you paid your employees? Or, and then at that time, we can also review things like receipts and discuss things like that. But what the clients really find valuable is they have it done every month. So when I ask you what happened last month, it's a whole lot different than saying 2 years ago, or what happened last, September. Most people are like, I have no idea. I don't know what that was for. So it helps.
So assuming they have, they know how to use QuickBooks, or they have an accountant, what is it that you like to see, or that makes life easier for contractors on their end? What can they do to just kind of organize things so that if they're just starting out and they don't have enough money to hire an accountant right now?
Right.
A lot of people say hiring a bookkeeper and an accountant is a good first step to make sure you're set up properly. But
Right.
say they don't want to pull the trigger. How can they organize everything so that it's not just a shoebox? What would you suggest for that?
Just a really basic start would be to, obviously it'd be great to have a file where you have, like, if you have vendors and you have, you're making a car payment, filing that stuff. But at the very least, if you don't have time, I recommend that people go out and get those, they're like a plastic file thing that has like the little 12 slots in it. Yep. And they usually have the months, and they can put them in there by month. Even if you just get it by month, that's a huge help. And even if you get it by cash receipts separated from credit card or bank receipts or debit card receipts, separating those two things, so that, because that's another thing that contractors really, really lose out on. And it's always a really thing that I know that it really worries them, is because they will pull out cash. They'll take an ATM withdrawal, and a lot of times it'll be a large amount. And they always tell me that, well, like, I use that to buy stuff, but they don't necessarily have all the receipts. And so if they can keep those cash receipts, even if they pull out that money from an ATM deposit, even if we code that as like a shareholder distribution, that's actually best practices, because if the owner takes a draw or takes a withdrawal, and even if it's a withdrawal at the desk with the bank, any bookkeeper, unless that person can say, here's the receipt, I took out $1,000 and here's a receipt, $1,000 receipt for my, vehicle payment or whatever. Unless we can say it's a vehicle payment, it's just going to be attributed as a draw to the owner.
Yeah.
But if we pull it, so if we code that correctly to an owner's draw, but if we have all these other cash receipts, we can, at the end of the year or the end of the month, we can take all those cash receipts and add them up and say, these are all expenses, and then we put that against the owner's draw, so then it reduces that, so that they're not showing that they took out as much money. It's going and being actually applied to expenses.
Yeah.
To expenses. Yeah.
Which does that tie into taxes at the end of the year and all of that?
Yeah. I mean, because if you're actually if you take out the money and you show that you took it as a draw, like you took it and it went in your pocket, because that's essentially what an owner's draw is saying. It's saying the owner took this.
He went on vacation or bought a barbecue for himself.
Exactly. Yeah, because the IRS or the accountant's going to say, I don't know what you used that for. But if you have offsetting receipts that are cash receipts, and we can make it's called a journal entry at the end of the month or the end of the year, and we can say, out of all the cash that was taken out this month, let's say they took out $10,000 of cash, but they had $9,000 of cash receipts, they're going to get those deductions, and they're going to be able to reduce their income if they're trying to save on their taxes and not pay as much in taxes. It's going to help them with that, because then it'll also be more accurate, because that's the other really big thing. I always say that I don't think people would do any bookkeeping if we didn't have taxes. Yeah. And I think it's pretty true. But when you think about it, the other really big benefit of bookkeeping, and especially for contractors, is if you can actually look at your costs each month or each year, and you can see what you're spending, it's surprising how much they learn from seeing that. They can see, oh my gosh, I had no idea I was spending so much on renting this equipment or renting this truck. And then they start to say, you know what, I really should probably buy one. It's able to help them make decisions that are going to help them grow their business, because they're like, you know what, I'm spending more on renting this than I would if I was buying it. And if I was buying it, I would get depreciation expense, and I'd get a lot more value, and it would have more control. So, and that's the other benefit when we look at the monthly end of the month, we go back, and especially if there's comparative data. So in other words, if we can compare what did you do in May 2020 to May 2019 or May 2018, you can start to see trends. And being able to plan and say, because I mean, I have one client who every like August and September, it was like he could not figure out, he's like, his sales would just go down, and he would be like, what is going on? And he would panic every time. And it would just be like, what's going on? So when we started going back and looking, and then we started realizing a lot of people were going back to school. They were, you know, getting busy taking their kids to college. And so it started to be like, well, you know what? Once he kind of realized that this just happened every year, and it wasn't something that his business that he was doing wrong, or things weren't, or something wasn't tanking, then he was able to plan for it. And we actually turned it around and said, you know what? This might be a really good time if you want to offer people a discount or advertise really heavily this month and say that, look, if you want to do your work this time of year, you're going to maybe get a better deal. And that way he could stay busy, or he could just say, you know what, I'm going to take my vacation now. Yeah. This is a really good time for me to take my vacation. And so there's really a lot of benefits that really can help contractors in their lives when they take more control. And bookkeeping is kind of the way that they can do that.
I love that. Yeah. And I think ultimately, if you don't have some sort of dashboard to see what, I know this in my business, I kept an Excel sheet for the first little bit because I was just getting in and diving in, learning as I went. I'm getting everything caught up now, and so now I can start to see where I'm spending money a lot better than I could by having to go in. It's like it's all there,
right,
easy to see. So
it's important. In Excel too. I mean, because then that's what, because you know, really QuickBooks is just, it's essentially a glorified Excel system, and it enables you to take that type of data and convert it into, make it into useful financial statements.
Exactly.
And that's what I always say this too, is like, if you think about it, people in sports, I mean, you're always keeping score. People don't play football and don't keep score. Yeah. You want to know how you're doing. And so I always say, you know, if you're in business, you need to know what is your goal and what are you trying to do. And most people, it's kind of is a whole nother area of motivational type of stuff, but people who do set goals, it's proven when they set goals, they reach them. And I have seen this time after time after time, where a client will, when they start becoming more aware of what's going on in their business, and they see their sales and they see the trends and expenses and stuff, it's almost like they mentally, something clicks, and they are able to, they start really hitting the goals.
Yeah.
And then they set the goal higher, and that's how they get that growth, and that's how they get that peace of mind. And it's really just, it's almost like, you know, flipping a switch, and things just start to fall into place once they have that. And I think there's something too about knowing that you have everything in control. That kind of tornado of receipts, which, like I said, I've seen a lot of trucks. Yeah, I mean, they know. Yeah. If you got that stuff swirling about you, and you know that you're losing stuff, and I mean, and we also, the thing is with receipts too, which is another whole thing about the bookkeeping that we really advocate. You know, I don't know if you know about receipts, but keep them for a year and they fade. And I've gone through a bunch of them, and some of them are only a year old, some of them are a month old, and especially since in the field, they get wet, they get rained on. Yeah. And so that's the other thing is we really push our contractors to take, since we all are walking around with these phones, we all can take a picture. We take that picture, and there are ways, and most people don't even utilize this, but once they do, it's a game changer. Take a picture of that, and I can either teach them how to put it in their QuickBooks as an attachment, or I can put it in there. And so you actually then get your register for your credit cards or for your bank statements, and you can actually have a receipt for each one of them attached right there. So then, because then you're not sitting there worrying about, oh my gosh, if I audit, am I going to be able to find these receipts? Because, you know, a lot of people are going around and they're like, in their head, they're like, well, you know what, if I get audited, I'll have to find it, or I'll have to make up receipts or whatever. And there's always that kind of hanging over your head. But knowing that you have that stuff, and all you have to do, especially, I mean, even not just contractors, but, you know, you go to a restaurant, because that's usually, you know, you get a receipt right at the top of it, you know, as you're filling out the tip and everything, who'd you go with, you know, what'd you discuss, blah, 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 what you're supposed to do for taxes. And take a picture of it. and then you can throw that stuff away.
Okay, that was my next question was, can you,
Yeah.
like a picture is good enough?
Yeah, which it is. And that leads to the other thing, which a huge misconception is, I always get people who are like, well, I have my credit card statements. I'm like, the IRS will not accept credit card statements. They will not. They want to see, like, especially you've got a lot of times somebody might go to Walmart, even if they're buying paints or brushes or stuff that they're really legitimately using for the job. If you have a Walmart receipt and you try to tell me that's job supplies, if you're in an audit and you talk to them, they're going to be like, we want to see where it says it's paintbrushes and stuff like that.
Just a line item on the visa statement isn't good enough.
Yeah.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned the picture taking too, because what I'm doing currently for a lot of mine are online receipts because I'm buying stuff online through different vendors.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually just set up like a dummy email, and I just forward all my receipts to that email, and then my accountant has them. And so that way, I found it, I don't know if that's a good system, but it's kind of the same as taking the picture and shooting it over, I think.
No, that's a really great system. That's a really good, and in fact, there are also, we're talking about receipts, besides, that's a super simple way to do it, is just taking the picture and doing that. There are actually some, we put clients with, there's a couple of them called HubDoc or Receipt Bank that you can subscribe to for different monthly amounts, and we can, depending on if the client's interested or not. It's the same type of idea. They actually give you a portal. They actually give you the email address to these receipts that'll go to, and they can help you categorize them. So, that's just that's another step up.
Yeah.
Just at the very least, I would say, even if somebody's not using a bookkeeper, not doing that, take pictures of your receipts, keep them. If you have an iPhone, you can, spend the extra, 99 cents or $2.99 or whatever it is to get the iCloud so that you can actually save all that stuff.
Yeah. Is there an app, a QuickBooks app that allows you to take the picture and take it right in?
Yes, there is actually that too.
Okay.
There's a QuickBooks Online app. You can do that as well. So that's another way to
kind of saves a step as well for people who
right.
Yeah.
Right. But if somebody's not, we'll find people that aren't even technical enough that they don't even either want to do it or they just don't want to learn.
Yeah.
It's kind of like people that never wanted to learn how to program the VCR. They're like, I don't want to do it. So at the very least, learn to take a picture and save that. So
email it to yourself or your accountant or whatever, just save it somewhere. Yeah. No,
exactly.
I think too, like I can speak from experience myself, as tax season was coming up, that was hanging over my head. I spent a couple days over the Christmas break getting mine ready because my tax season ended in December. And so, it's stressful. Like you're kind of thinking like, well, am I going to miss them? Like, are they going to balance out? So if you can do it month to month, now I know everything's taken care of, and it's so much peace of mind, and it's not kind of weighing over me. And you get the added bonus of being able to see everything.
Exactly.
Now my other question was, can you help people in Canada as well?
I can, and if I can't, I have referral people that I work with that I know through QuickBooks. This Intuit reseller partner that I work with, one of the other great benefits is if we get anybody who's like got a really interesting niche or a problem, or if they're in Canada or something like that, they can we can refer them to somebody who can help.
Excellent. So, because I know there's a few people here that listen that are in Canada, so I just wanted to cover that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to touch on kind of the basic, what as a business owner we should be doing before we move to the scary stuff?
The taxes. Well, the one thing I think I would touch on is that, a lot of times people will come, the general disorganization tends to be something that really bothers them, and they maybe don't think that they have enough money to hire an admin or something like that. So getting a bookkeeper like part-time, where we come in and do the monthly rec and help give them the advisory on what's going on. One of the things about that is I always say that getting the books done and getting that tamed, those receipts tamed, and getting everything kind of under control leads to a workflow. It leads to a process. And when you talk about what really helps businesses thrive, it's processes and being able to do something. A lot of times somebody will start a business because they're like, I'm really, really great at carpentry and I can do amazing work, but they did not, and I think you've read the E-Myth. I think we've talked about this before, where you talk about that entrepreneurial seizure. You're like, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to do this because I'm really great carpenter, and they may be an amazing carpenter, But then they get into and they realize all this other stuff, like you said, wearing all these hats, having to be, human resources if they expand and all this stuff. When we get in and do the books, it starts leading to processes, because if you start doing your receipts and doing these types of things, you start to see a way to get everything so that it's in order and not continue to, because one of the things that I really see in a lot of businesses, but particularly with contractors, is they're doing a lot of the same stuff over and over again, but they don't have it. They should have a form for that. They should have, a contract for this, and there should be somebody, and if they do want to hire somebody, they always say, let's hire somebody, but if you don't have your process set up, if you don't know this, you know what you want done, you don't know how to get there. But starting to work with the books starts getting you in that mindset and starts helping you realize, okay, we're going to start with, the sales. We're going to start with this. We're going to then do a contract, and then we're going to write up an estimate, and we're going to do all this stuff. And that's really something that's really important to contractors, to really help them get control and grow their businesses. So
yeah, no, that's excellent. That's excellent. I'm just noticing my webcam is like rakishly at an angle here. 1 second. Has it been super distracting for you?
I didn't notice.
Okay. Well, now everybody's noticing. No, that's excellent. Processes are, I think, for me, like having kind of just gone through that process, and that's why I wanted to get you on to chat about it, to see if I was on the right track, really. But getting the process in place, and as soon as an email, I leave the emails unread, or leave the receipts somewhere where maybe at the end of the day you take a picture and you shoot those off to your accountant or your bookkeeper, or email them to yourself to a folder or whatever. But getting that process in place, it frees up brain power. It frees up. I think it bleeds over into a bunch of different areas in the business. Right.
And that's the whole point, is to try to get it to where all of us who have businesses, we know that you could spend your whole life doing your business. It's just never ending. There's always stuff to do. And even as something as simple as, like, if you're handwriting out estimates and doing handwritten contracts and invoices and stuff, knowing that if you actually set up and use QuickBooks Online the way that it's intended, or even QuickBooks Desktop, you can actually create something that, like, I have a client who, they have the same scope of work for a certain type of a job. So when they actually pull up the drop down and they start typing in scope of work, it automatically pops up all of the things that they want to cover. They want to cover that, caulking and painting is done by others. And it's important that they cover that, because if they don't, that's going to come back on them. And, that all comes down to the communication. When you can have your books and your invoices and your estimates do a lot of that communication for you, and then that whole idea of he who documents best wins. And because in contracting that, because you're going to always have that, you said
you're basically
you were
talking about if there was any discrepancies in what people thought in the outcome, lawsuits, whatever.
Exactly. Or lien, you get into a situation where you need to file lien and you need to be able to produce documents. And let's say, I just say, look, if you've got your estimate and your proposal and then your signed contract, and it all says it right there in QuickBooks that, it only includes, these windows, or it only includes this wall or whatever, and this only going to be whatever the measurement is, you're getting it in writing, and you're doing it at the same time while you're also accomplishing your billing. And so you're kind of doing, killing two birds with one stone, covering yourself for a lot of legal stuff, and then getting in the habit of communicating beforehand so that the client can come back, the customer can't come back and say, no, you said you were going to paint the whole house. And you're like,
you're managing yours and your customers' expectations, and putting it in writing so that you and the customer have something to come back to.
Right.
Yeah, and we didn't really even touch on the invoicing part of it. Like, you can do invoicing through QuickBooks, and it all integrates with the accounting and everything. So it's very, very useful that way.
And the payments too, because that's another thing, is you can do QuickBooks Online. If you have a laptop, and most people, they can have an iPad, you can actually set up the invoice. You can have them sign, and you can have them pay right there on the spot, even if it's a deposit. Yeah. Which you can collect that deposit, so you're not chasing money, and you're getting
Visa or debit or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And again, then you're getting more, because I know you see all the time. One of the things you get besides the shoe boxes is you get these invoice pads where they've done it all in writing and everything else like that, and it's more professional. Yeah. And it when the client especially every once in a while when you get one of those clients that is going to maybe try to take advantage of you or try to push something. If you come across as being more organized and having that system, I think that they don't tend to push as much on that. Whereas if they see somebody they can tell that they've got this, yellow invoice book with all this handwritten stuff, and they're giving them, a piece of paper, and, whether or not we like it, unfortunately, we're a lot of electronic, documents now, but
Yep.
that can also help us. So.
Yeah, well, and being able to collect payment by card is a big thing, I think, for,
Right.
personally, I don't have the cash lying around. It's either like a trip to the bank or whatever. And for bigger purchases, a lot of people have to put it on Visa because of where they are. So if you can't do that for them, then they really can't afford your services, right?
Right, exactly. And there's also, depending on what state, or I don't know, I'm really not familiar with what Canada has. There are certain states that you're not allowed to charge them the credit card fee, but there are also, there's some clients, they may have, we've had clients in different customers where they want to pay for, $15,000 on a credit card because they want those points on their, frequent flyer card or whatnot.
Yeah.
In that instance, I tell them, it's like, you know what, you pass on that fee to them if you can. If you're in a state where you can do that, or you call it a convenience fee or something like that. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know exactly what the law is in that, but definitely research that whatever state you're in.
Yeah.
But that's another thing, if you're going to do credit card payments and they're going to be large things like that. But that's helped save a lot of people getting those deposits, because that's another thing I think that I've seen a lot of contractors do. They start out and they don't get a deposit, especially if they're ordering materials and stuff. Being able to say, hey, we're going to at least and this is where you kind of come up with a lot of your ideas of how you're running your company. Again, this starts to lead into how are you developing? What are your company policies in regards to, look, we're going to do a big job. We're going to order, a whole bunch of lumber. Are we going to pay for this? And then we're going to deliver it. And what if they don't pay us?
Yeah.
So being able to give them an invoice and say, look, here, you're going to pay for the lumber. It's going to be shipped to you. You'll get your lien release and all that stuff. And then maybe saying, look, we require, 25% down for the labor to start. And I think we talked about that before on the Facebook page before, about how getting those types of things and covering yourself is really important for surviving and in the long haul, and then growing your business. Because you've probably seen it, and I've seen it many times, where if people aren't doing it, they look like they're more working out of the back of their truck rather than a legitimate business, they're going to get in trouble.
Yeah, I think there was a conversation where you chimed in my Facebook group, and for those who aren't aware, I have a group called Contractors Growth Tips and Strategies, and we cover a bunch of things from what I do for clients with websites. You've chimed in with bookkeeping. There's another show that often posts their videos in there that they do on bookkeeping and just talking about business in general. But in that particular instance, the guy had lost quite a bit of money because for a variety of reasons. But you had chimed in with some things that hopefully would help him save that headache and hassle and all of that going forward.
Yep. Yeah, because that's the kind of stuff that keeps people up at night, and nobody needs that.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Okay, excellent. Well, I know you've got we've got 15 minutes left. Why don't we dive into the deep, dark, scary world of taxes here?
Yes, exactly.
The point is for you to kind of peel it back so it's less scary, really.
Right, exactly. Not be quite so afraid. Obviously, you want to be all that stuff that we talked about trying to do to cover yourself and do the right things so that you're keeping track if you ever get in a situation with the IRS are important. But I mean, there's still going to be times when life gets away, that a lot of things happen, and people either they don't file or they don't pay their taxes. And one of the other services that we offer is we offer tax resolution. It's tax resolution help. And I'm also an enrolled agent with the IRS. I don't work for the IRS, but basically went through a series of 3 different tests so whoever's becoming an enrolled agent has to pass. A lot of times there will be ex-IRS agents who will become enrolled agents because they really know the tax law. Enrolled agents, CPAs, tax attorneys are allowed to practice in front of the IRS. So that means if I get somebody who comes to me and says, I just got a notice and I owe $15,000 to the IRS. What do I do? Help me out. One of the first things we do is we file a power of attorney form, which gives permission for me to be able to call the IRS and to pull a transcript and be able to find out kind of what exactly the situation is. It's almost like a lab test. And
Yeah.
it reads, we order it and we're able to get it through our software, and we're able to say, you know, where are they in the process? Are they about to get levied? You know, are they gonna, is the IRS, have they filed a notice that they're gonna levy? In other words, which means they can actually come in and sweep your bank account. If you have money in there, they're gonna take whatever they can. They can levy property, other property. But what we do is we come in and talk to the IRS on the taxpayer's behalf, and we are able to say, you know, what is the situation? What is the plan? And then we talk to the IRS and help resolve it. And it's a really fulfilling work because you're able to take somebody who is coming in a panic mode. And usually people wait till the very last minute. They'll be getting, you know, we'll say to them, well, like, you know, is this your, you know, when did you get this notice? They'll be like, oh, I got this like 6 months ago. I got this a year ago. And they'll come to us when they get that notice that says, we are levying your account.
Yeah.
Or else the bank account's actually been swept, and they'll be like, oh, I think I need to do something about this now. So that's when we come in and help them with this kind of stuff. And in this situation, I'm not a lawyer, but because I can represent people in front of the IRS, we have the same type of method where we don't want the taxpayer speaking to the IRS, because the IRS they have ways of finding out stuff about, if they're talking to the taxpayer might say something that they don't think is important to the case, but it could end up being a real big game changer. So we go in and we act as an intermediary and basically help them find a way out of it. And finding a way out is, it depends on what the situation is. Everybody has always seen those commercials, like pay, you know, pennies on the dollar for what you owe. If you owe less than $10,000 or whatever, and they think that they're going to get out of it for free. Most of those types of firms are really marketing firms, and they're really not actually doing the tax resolution, and they bring people in and they take a lot of money and they don't necessarily resolve it. I'm not saying that they all don't, but there tend to be a lot of fly-by-night type of things. But we get in there and actually get stuff filed, get it taken care of. And there's different ways. There's the OIC is called an offer in compromise. That's usually what those types of firms are offering, because they're trying to say, you owe $15,000, we're going to get it so that you only paid $1,000 or $400 or whatever, which those cases do happen, but they're literally they're like 0.1% of what actually gets settled. But there are other things, like if people actually don't have the money to pay, there's something called currently non-collectible status, which means that one of the parts, after doing the transcript, we do a form that's called a 433F, or there's a couple different 433s, which is essentially like a mortgage application.
Okay.
And I always tell people that what you're really doing is by not paying the IRS and not filing, you essentially took out a loan from them. And so now you're going to fill out an application, and they're going to, based upon the application and the things that the parameters that they set, they're going to see whether or not they're going to allow you to either not pay it for a while, settle on it, or whether you're going to come up with the installment plan. And most people, installment plans are usually the way that you're going to go. And it'll all be based upon kind of whatever your residual income after you fill out this application. Because the IRS allows you certain most people don't know this, and when they see it, it really makes them mad, but they'll allow you, depending on where you are in the country, depending on what city, they'll say you're allowed this much for your vehicle expenses. And so once you add up all of these things, and if you have, let's say you have $50 left over,
go into your payment.
You're going to be paying $50 a month to the IRS. Yeah. And that's when you have the compromises and the different things. If you get to the end of that and you have nothing, they're either going to say, well, we can't collect it. It's currently non-collectible, and we're going to look into it and maybe next year. But that gives you a year to kind of breathe and to be able to come up with a plan. I had one that basically they had a car payment, and the IRS said there were 3 years left on the car payment. And once they stopped the car payment, they would have another $350. And they said, well, in 3 years, we're going to probably have $350 a month payments. So they would just take over the money that was available.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So the key takeaway really is, obviously, where we started at with bookkeeping.
Don't get in that spot.
if you bookkeep properly and you know are accounting for how much you need to be setting aside for taxes and all of that stuff, that's going to keep you from getting here. But if you do end up in that spot, there's ways to people you can contact, Jen being one of them, in your business, but basically to help you kind of navigate the scary place you find yourself in. You come with the knowledge and the ability to basically intervene on behalf of your clients, so that they're not saying things that incriminate them and end up making their case worse or what have you.
Right, and we also know, everything that we do is legal, but there are some things, just like with taxes, there are some things that are legal loopholes that you can do when you're dealing with, when you owe taxes, things that you can do to help yourself out.
Yeah.
I won't go into them now, but if anybody wants to, if they are in that situation and they want to go over it, or feel free to, to contact me. And obviously it's not something, tax resolution, owing money to the IRS, that's not something you sit around when you're out with a bunch of friends and you're like, hey, most people don't. They're like, they don't say, hey, I owe, $25,000. Yeah. They don't talk about it. So then they don't know who to turn to. And a lot of times they don't even know. Before I became an enrolled agent, I didn't even know about enrolled agents. I just thought that there were CPAs and tax lawyers. And enrolled agents, a lot of times, were cheaper than a tax lawyer. And a lot of those firms are they're tax law firms. And so it's just one of those things that it's definitely something good to know.
Yeah.
And like you said, the monthly bookkeeping, that's, when you get your monthly statements and you figure out how much you're making, that is where you also plan on, so you don't end up getting a huge tax bill at the end of the year. If let's say we go through the first quarter and you have a loss, well, we know you're not going to be owing anything yet because you haven't made any money, especially if you're, depending on the type of entity, if it's a pass-through entity type, let's say, and depending on how much you've taken out in draws, you can look at all that kind of stuff together and figure out, what it's going to be and have a better idea, so that you don't get at the end of the year and say, oh my gosh, I had no idea that I owed $10,000.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. And it's funny you mentioned the tax planning, because there's a guy I've known for a little while now, and I'm having him on, I believe, next week to chat about. That's what he does, is tax planning to help people. It's we had a couple conversations. It's wild what you can do. And so you're saying you can do the same thing, basically, if you're in arrears with the IRS, and you can figure things out and all of that for your clients, correct?
Well, from the bookkeeping, yeah, exactly. So as you go, because obviously that's another one of the big things is that, just if you have a calendar tax year and December 31st is that's the end of the year, you're kind of done with a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that you're like, well, game over. Now we're starting a new game. And so a lot of doors close. So obviously it's important to, and quarter by quarter too, because especially when you've got quarterly estimated tax payments, you want to make sure you're hitting those deadlines. And this year with COVID, it's been really crazy because they actually allowed us to wait to file and pay until July 15th for quarter 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Which was very confusing for everybody, because it's like, well, everything was confusing, but that was particularly confusing because you want to make sure that if you owe something on your quarterlies, that you get that deposited. Otherwise, then you're going to be dealing with penalties again. Yeah. So it's always part of it is penalties.
Yeah, and it all comes back to know what you're spending, what you're bringing in, where the money's going, etc. From a bookkeeping perspective, and then you're well on your way to success at that point.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up here?
No, I don't think so, unless you had any other questions or anything.
No, I just wanted to once again talk about I'll put the link in the description, your link to QuickBooks there for 50% off for the first year. Obviously, reach out to Jen if you have questions on the tax world and all of that sort of stuff, and bookkeeping and whatnot. She has good experience from a contractor's perspective and can help you with that. So yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate. I've learned some stuff. Makes me feel like I'm kind of on the right track with my bookkeeping. Obviously, got some improvements to make, but I think that I appreciate you coming on here, and I think that people will definitely get some value out of this, and definitely, save some money if you're not using QuickBooks, and can
Great.
take,
Yeah.
take advantage of your hour of free consult as well if they need some help.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, even if they don't want to use me for bookkeeping or anything like that, still go on and get that. If you're thinking or have been thinking about signing up for QuickBooks, go ahead and sign up for that because it's a really good deal.
Yeah.
And you're not in a contract. But if you're using it for a year, you'll obviously get that good discount. And there's 3 different versions. If you have any doubt of what you want to do as far as tracking things, you're going to want to go with a higher level because that will allow you to do more job costing. So that would be the way to go.
Excellent. Well, your voice is running away on you here, so
I know. I was going to say, I've got allergies. I've got the Florida humidity and allergies kicking in.
Yeah, no, that's all good. Once again, really appreciate you coming on, Jennifer, and I'll refer people over to you, and hopefully that you can help some people grow their business in a way that makes sense.
We'd love to do that. Thank you so much. It was really enjoyable talking to you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All
Take
right,
care.
we'll wrap up off air here, and I'll just stop the recording. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you.